What's up, ninjas and ninjas? Welcome to another episode of the Exposure Ninja Digital Marketing Podcast. My name's Tim Cameron Kitchen. I'm head ninja at Exposure Ninja, which is an awesome digital marketing agency helping small and medium-sized businesses get more leads and sales through your website. And that is exactly what this podcast is about, helping you to get more leads and sales through your website. Now, we actually run a Google Ads help service. If you're stuck with this, you're running your own campaign or someone else is running your ad campaign, and you're just not sure if it's as profitable as it should be. What you can do is you can reach out to us at Exposure Ninja. Just go through the free website and marketing review at exposureninja.com, and we'll take a free look at your pay-per-click ad account, and we'll have a look and see what sort of improvements can be made. We'll give you all these recommendations free of charge, and then of course if you want us to implement them and run your campaign, of course we'll be happy to discuss that. But don't waste money on Google Ads. Google has enough cash. I hope you find this podcast episode useful. And by the way, just so you know, you can watch all these podcast episodes on YouTube if you just go to YouTube and search for Exposure Ninja. See you soon. All right. So we all know that Google Ads is expensive. If you tried it, you know it. I know it. Everyone at Exposure Ninja knows it. We do it for ourselves. We do it for clients all the time. But before we do that, from what I've seen, the majority of businesses that are advertising on Google Ads are being nowhere near as effective with their budget as they could be. And many of them are just opening the trunk and dumping the cash into the Google landfill. And it's got to stop. It's absolutely got to stop. So if you're running Google Ads and the numbers just don't quite seem to be adding up and you're thinking,
am I just doing this wrong, or is something seriously up here?
Or if you're considering running Google Ads and you're a bit cautious about getting involved, let me give you some golden rules for when not to waste any budget at all inside Google Ads. Sign number one that you should spend no money on Google Ads is when the numbers just don't make sense. Now, one quick caveat on when the numbers don't make sense. If you're an e-commerce business, you might be selling cheaper products. Using Google Shopping ads rather than text search ads usually makes much more financial sense because the clicks are lower priced and generally the traffic is much better quality because it can see the price, it can see the product, it can see the store before it clicks on you. So that traffic is usually better quality, usually has a higher conversion rate, so it can make a lot more sense. So let me show you on the old iPad just to further my case for making this thing tax deductible. Okay, so when don't the numbers make sense to run Google Ads? Here's the calculation that you want to do. You need to know a few things. Firstly, you need to know your average cost per click. The basic economics, you just can't make sense of Google Ads. No matter what way you slice it, you're never going to make it work. It's never going to make any money. So here are a couple of really important calculations that you need to do before you do any Google Ads to make sure that it's even financially possible for you to come out on top. Okay, so we need to know a few numbers. First thing that we're going to need to know is your cost per click, or your CPC. Now, you should get these fairly easy from Google Ads. So we're going to use some example numbers here so they kind of make a bit more sense. So let's say that your average cost per click in your market is £2. For some people it's going to be more, for some people it's going to be less. We're just going to use an example number. The next thing that we need to know is your website's conversion rate. So this is the percentage of people that come to your website that turn into a lead or sale. Now, what you've got to bear in mind is that the traffic from Google Ads might be slightly higher quality than you're getting from other sources, or it might be slightly lower quality. It really depends. So your conversion rate isn't always the same for each different traffic source. But just to do some basic math, we're going to assume that your conversion rate is the kind of industry standard, slightly depressing 1%. So what we can do from this is we can deduce how much it's going to cost you to get a lead or sale through your website. So in this case, it's going to be, we need 100 visitors to get each lead or sale, and we're going to be paying £2 per click. So we've got 100 times £2 equals £200 CPA, cost per acquisition or cost per lead, whatever the thing is that you're having people do on your website. So if that makes financial sense for you, then good. Do Google Ads. Now, obviously, you can change these numbers. If you make your conversion rate 5% instead, that reduces your cost per lead or cost per sale to £40, which makes a massive difference. But just using these numbers, let's say that makes sense for you, then great, run Google Ads. If it doesn't make sense for you, then you've got to kind of reverse engineer what your conversion rate would need to be in order for it to make sense. So let me give you another example. This is the business that got in contact with us asking for help with Google Ads. So their product was £10. And on that, the profit was about £8. So £8 profit. So when we looked at the cost of advertising in the space, the cost per click was about £1.50. So £1.50 cost per click. Now the website at this point was converting very, very low, less than 2%. In fact, they weren't actually able to track the conversion rate, but the clicks that they could see were less than 2%. So that means they need 50 visitors per sale. Right, so how much is it costing them to get each sale? Well, it's costing them 50 times 150, which is £75. £75. Doesn't make sense, does it? £8 profit costing them £75 to get it. The only world where that makes sense is one where there's a back end. They're buying the £10 thing because they're about to be sold a £500 course or something like that. Other than that, it doesn't make sense. So for a business like this, Google Ads, you've really got to play with your numbers in order for this to work. So you'd have to have a conversion rate of like 50% for this to be worthwhile doing at all. And for most businesses, if it's an e-commerce purchase through the site, you're not going to get a conversion rate of 50%. So you got to be conscious of your numbers and make sure that they actually make sense. Otherwise, there's no point. Reason number 2, not to spend any money on Google Ads, is when your website sucks, okay? I tried to find a nice way of saying it, but honestly, well, if your website sucks compared to your competitors, you go onto Google and you type in the thing that you sell and you see all of these other businesses advertising on Google, and they've all got really nicely designed sites with really prominent calls to action. They work great on mobile, and you're like,
yeah, I would kill for that, but my thing just looks terrible.
It's pointless entering that race until your website is good enough to compete. Otherwise, you're basically paying to enter a race where your car is much slower and much less economical than all of the other cars on the starting grid. There's no point entering that race because you're going to lose and you're going to spend money losing. You need to have a genuinely viable alternative to the other sites advertising for that term. Otherwise, you're just a Me Too, but you're actually worse than the Me Too's. Reason number 3 you should spend no money on Google Ads is if you don't have a clear conversion goal on your website that you can track. This blows my mind. I remember talking to a business, a fairly small business, but they were spending £10,000 a month on Google Ads without tracking conversions. So the first question we ask is, how well is it working? The only answer they can give is,
well, business as a whole seems to be okay, so it must be working all right.
The trouble is you can't make any decisions if you're not tracking conversions. You don't know if that business is coming through Google Ads or organic. You don't know if it is coming through Google Ads, which areas within Google Ads. You don't know which keywords are generating those sales, which landing pages. You've just got no information at all. So the trouble with that approach is you might be wasting 95% of that 10K a month, but you just don't know. It's the whole thing about like 50% of my advertising is not working. I don't know which 50 or whatever the phrase is. But that's a stupid phrase that no one should ever say again, because now we have all the data that we need to know exactly what's working for people. So unless you're going to track it in Google Ads, pointless running it. Reason number 4 not to waste any money in Google Ads is if people actually genuinely aren't searching for what it is that you do. I was talking to someone yesterday who runs a state agency consultancy firm. She said, should I be running Google Ads? And, I gave her a really simple answer, which is, are people searching for what you do? If they are, yes. If they're not, no. Right? If people aren't searching for what you do, it's absolutely pointless appearing for those searches. So it's really important to understand whether you are an impulse purchase, so people see it and go,
oh, that looks pretty cool.
Or if you're something that people are actually searching for. If you're something that people are actually searching for, usually organic and Google's ads will be a priority for you. If you're selling something that's impulse purchase, you might be much more towards social media and social ads, because those are things things where people are just scrolling.
And, oh, I can see that face mask. Great, that looks good. I'm going to buy that.
Whereas doing that type of thing on Google Ads might be much more tricky. Reason number 5, not to touch Google Ads with your credit card, is if you're not committed to optimizing and tracking things over time. Here's the most dangerous attitude that you can have for Google Ads. It's all about setting up a great campaign. Once I've set up the great campaign, it's just going to run itself. It's so dangerous. I haven't ever seen an ad platform which gets better left alone, right? They all get worse. Your Google ad campaign that kills it in week 1, by week 5, if you haven't done anything with it, it's probably in the floor. The same with Facebook ads, right? Sometimes these things get a bit better if the algorithm figures some stuff out, but rarely you get kind of transformational growth. With Google ads, it's all about optimizing and refining over time. We might be taking 90% off the average cost per acquisition over the first 6 to 12 months of a campaign, but we can only do that by collecting the data from Google and seeing what's really working, what's not working, and making sure all of the budget is in the stuff that is working. You need to be tracking and you need to be monitoring it. If you don't have the time or you don't have the inclination because you're a bit like me, you're like,
Hey, great, let's set this thing up. Oh, let's spend loads of time working and setting up. Great, now it's done. Let's move on to the next thing.
if that's your kind of personality and you know that that's your personality, don't even bother running any kind of ad platform yourself because you're not going to give it the time it needs. You need someone who's really hot on it, who likes tweaking and optimizing to take care of those things. So if that's you, don't do it yourself. Either get someone else to do it or just simply steer clear. Okay, so that's when not to run Google Ads. How do you know if you should? Because the reality is that for many businesses, Google Ads is a fantastic source of traffic. Even if you've got great organic visibility, sometimes running Google Ads can make a lot of sense because it means that you've got that backup. Should anything happen with your organic visibility, you're not completely tied to that one source of traffic. 1 is such a dangerous number in marketing because it can so easily turn into a 0. So we like to always have a backup source of paid ads that you can run, that you can start to scale up if the organic starts to fall. So when the numbers make sense, if you project your numbers, you work out your average cost per click, your conversion rate, and then your cost per acquisition, and you can see that you can make money from that equation, then fantastic. Google Ads should be a priority to get right. If your site is converting twice as well as your closest competitor, for example, you can afford to outspend them quite significantly because you know that that website is going to be so much better at generating leads or sales for you than those competitors. If you're tracking your data and you're committed to optimizing the campaign, again, Google Ads can work really well. Don't be disheartened if you don't get the results that you need in month 1 or month 2. Usually with a pay-per-click campaign, we're expecting to see that cost per acquisition come down and down and down and down over time as we're able to refine the campaign and fine-tune it. So if people are searching for what you're doing and all of those above criteria apply, then I would definitely suggest testing Google Ads. If you want some help running your ad campaign, then of course you can request a free marketing review from Exposure Ninja. Just click on the link somewhere and it'll magically happen. But I hope you found this useful and I hope that you can run your Google ad campaign profitably without wasting any of that ad budget because the world really does not need a Google self-driving can opener. Stay safe, ninjas and ninjettes. See you soon.